Hi, Wiestke. Welcome to the Think Tank. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
We're laughing, guys. I don't know if you're listening or watching this, but we're laughing because we both turned up in like different shades of red today, and it looks very funny. But Wiestke, I wanted you on because you were born in South Africa. You now live in Madrid with 3 children. You have a role in the UK, and you have just this interesting made your own life approach to your career, which has been really inspiring to me. So for those of people who don't know, Wiestke is currently the CCO of Monex. She's held various positions, which we can go into later down the line. But welcome.
Thanks. Thank you for having me. Wow, that's quite an intro.
It is quite an intro. So I'm going to hit you with some hard questions.
I know you are. I'm sure.
I was laughing about how mean I could be, but I was more curious about sort of your management style, because you're also very well known in the market for your management style and being a real advocate for justice and what's right, and promoting within teams. You have an enviable reputation of your teams following you as well where you go. When did you know you were really good at it? And what makes you so?
That's a hard question. I don't know if I'm still good at it. I still try to improve, focusing on people's strengths within the team. Not everybody's good at everything, neither am I, and that's why we're a team. So just try and focus on that. What makes me good at it? I think I'm quite self-aware. It's kind of like a puzzle, a compliance puzzle. You can find the right pieces and the right people to go in different places. So it's a constant evaluation, I guess, self-evaluation, but also of where the team is going, what the business needs as well, because that also changes.
Yeah.
So just having joined a new team, you know, I'm in that assessment period of what are they trying to achieve as a business, reverse engineer that, and what does my team need to look like, and what skill set they have, and what do they need to kind of achieve what we need to do. So
how do you approach that? Because quite often I speak with MLROs, and well, literally every day, and who are going, we're not always going into companies, but that first 100 days is really crucial for them. And some of them go in because they've got a problem to fix. It's all guns blazing. They know what's the war ahead of them, and they come in armed for battle. What's your approach? Like, what are you kind of doing this first?
I think I'm kind of known for going to those territories where they don't have things, because I'm a fixer. I'm not scared of doing the work, and I really want to know how bad it is. I remember when I joined Global Reach, my boss at the time was recruiting me, and 5 minutes into it, she said, I just want to tell you, you know, there's work to do here. And I said, oh, great, you were really honest with me. So now I know what to expect. The first 100 days, I kind of focus on the 3 top objectives they want. I ask them straight up, what would success look like in the first 3 months? Because obviously the proof is in the pudding. Yeah. And then the other things, I just kind of pyramid down while I'm starting sussing out what else is going on. Because there's always a lot. You never know until you're inside the walls what's going on.
And how do you go about assessing a team? Obviously, you don't want to talk about Monex because it's a little bit sensitive. People might be listening wondering how you're assessing them. But in previous jobs, how have you kind of gone in to assess a team? Because I know myself, when I've had new managers, I'm either on my best behavior or my worst behavior. Not me personally, but, you know, people can go like that. So in your previous roles when you're at Aston, for example, how did you assess the team's capabilities?
I didn't have a team when I joined Aston. I had to build one, which was also good. In the first 2 weeks, I just spent one-to-one time with people just to know what did they do in their day-to-day and what would they like to do. Yeah. Because a lot of people just show up to work to do their job and go home, and that's not great. You want people to be invested. You want them to feel like there's growth, and that's kind of how people stay. So the assessment period is just about getting to know the person, maybe hanging out a little bit in the kitchen when you see people there, having a casual conversation. It's kind of like board meetings. Most of those decisions get made in informal settings more than, you know, a formal one-to-one like we're having right now. But that assessment is constant, and it's an assessment on myself as well. Like, am I matching, you know, what they need? What do they need from me to help them out to do what they need to do? Yeah. So it's just knowing what people want to do. Are they good at some things? Do they want to do more of that? Have they not had the opportunity? Create the opportunity. Give them a voice in the areas. That assessment is a constant thing. It's not the first 100 days.
I think also it's you've got to understand the context of where you're going into, right? Like if you've been somewhere, I'm recruiting a role at the moment, and they are creating this new function, and they're bringing people from other functions into the function, and then they're hiring a new manager above. So that person who's coming in to manage is going to be managing inexperienced people who have needing a lot of love and training. And if she was going in thinking that she was inheriting an experienced team, the lens she has on them is completely different. Yeah. So do you kind of context it out and think, well, they're going to take 6 months. They've had a really toxic manager before. Let's get them up to speed. Is that something you worry about? Or are you just like, get shit done?
Yeah, that's me. It's more about bringing people on a journey. I know that sounds really like, you know, but nothing changes overnight, but be very clear in terms of what the expectations are. Because I think most teams, not in compliance teams, but they're not clear on what the business strategy is, the commercial strategy. Yeah. And then decisions are made on bringing vendors in or maybe bringing extra people to the team or letting people go, whatever the situation is. And it creates kind of fear and uncertainty. Yeah. And when people have fear and uncertainty, especially, you know, in that 4 to 8 years of your career type of space up to middle management, so it's not a good vibe because those people love to gossip.
Yeah, that's where I get all my gossip, guys. Just so you know, the reason I talk to analysts so much is because they are loose-lipped.
They are loosey-lipped. So it's about taking them on a journey and making sure the message is coming right from the top. This is the reason we're doing these things, and that's the reason why I'm making these decisions. And I need your help. And if you can't help or you don't want to help, then you have decisions to make for yourself. I don't have to make them for you. Yeah. But I'm being very transparent as I can be. Yeah. But almost over communicating. And one thing I've learned in the last 4 or 5 years is to let go of my assumptions. Kind of assume people know things. They must have heard it. They must have seen it. They should. That isn't necessarily the case. So almost over explaining things, but not in a condescending way, but over explaining things in a basic way. And you can see people go, oh.
Well, so because it happens to me, truthfully. You know, someone says something and you feel a bit too dumb to get some clarification on it. So you kind of just let the point go in your head and actually you don't walk away with a clear picture of what's going on. That's true. To me all the time. So, okay, well, that kind of helps me a little bit into my next point. I'm always really curious when you come, when you're an existing leader or you're coming in, how do you, one, pull the trigger to hire, and how do you pitch, particularly when you're a new head? Because it's every company's fear that when they hire a new compliance or MLRO is that you're going to go, I need 18 people to help me with this. And they think, oh my God. Yeah. So how do you make that decision and how do you pitch it?
I think I wait to see what the resources are like. I spend time on using what we already have. So that's what I'm currently doing in my role. And I've done that at every other role I've been in. And once things are clear and structured and you know what skills fit where, you can see where the gaps lie. Yeah. It's currently going on in my team. You know, some people who are on maternity leave, they haven't decided not to come back. So I'm reassessing, you know, I've been there 3 months. What's the areas? What is that team looking like right now? Do we need to hire the same type of person? So it's about using what you already have before just going out guns a-blazing. Nobody likes to spend money unnecessarily. This is a problem in the compliance department where people, you know, typical head of compliance comes in, they know someone, okay, they can do the job. And it does create a lot, you know, to a tech coming in. You also don't need that many people. You need people that understand it, but you need to figure out first what, like I said, the business. Yes, what's the future of the business? What's the commercial need? Yeah. And whether or not that's still necessary. And that's okay. That's growth, right? Yes. Things are not going to always stay the same. You need to be adaptable. You need to be able to constantly change and still keep assessing if that's still the same thing you need. I think it's, you know, I'm quite a stubborn person, being a Capricorn, but, you know, I've also learned being stubborn isn't the best way. You can't just stick to your guns. If you made a decision, it's the wrong decision. It's better to say, okay, cut my losses right now and move on to the next thing. Yeah. And I think that comes over time.
And how do you decide then when to hire temp or perm? Because we see a lot of roles that should be permanent on a temporary basis, like assurance monitoring, testing, all that kind of stuff where people think it is project-based. How do you decide and what are you looking for if you're hiring a temp in that space?
It is project-based when we have a situation to solve and there's a certain deadline to solve it. So say, for instance, backlogs on something.
Yeah, of course.
I've had temps in the past work on certain projects and had a certain deadline. A consultant, for instance.
Yeah.
I would say until I can assess what we need in the long term.
Because it is true when you're, you know, when we're layering all the fraud policies or the consumer duty policies over existing kind of things this year, people needed someone senior to do that, but then the implementation and the maintenance of that, they didn't need someone super senior. So they had super senior people doing it and overpaid for the job that they were doing. So there is a risk of that. If you were a newish MLRO CCO and you were about to go, well, you've probably already done it this year, but you are asking for headcount, what's some tips?
Asking for headcount in terms of?
Going to the board and saying, I need more budget to hire.
When you have proper systems and controls in place, you can make subject matter experts of people. In a small firm, people kind of do everything because they need to, right? In a bigger firm, you have departments doing certain things and it's really siloed. But at the previous role, I had to go and structure the team in a way, again, to fit the business. You know, from an MLRO perspective, you need an onboarding person, you need an ongoing monitoring person, and you need somebody for escalations. It's just about working out what the skeleton is of the team, which is always similar, the same, and who you need in that position. When I say I need somebody to kind of take that on so I can do other things, and these are the things, you know, that's going to add more value, it's easy to get that buy-in from the board, to get that budget to be able to do it.
I'm drinking my coffee like I'm about to spill some tea because...
Oh dear.
I just want to talk about something. So when you... when you moved to Aston, you weren't an MLRO.
No.
And you said, no problem.
Yes.
I can be the MLRO.
Indeed.
So...
story of my life.
yeah, amen, should be. But who gave you the kahunas to do that? What gave you the confidence to do that? And you were talking about hiring and skill gaps and things. Initially, you weren't able to hire straight away. So how did you upskill?
That was a big jump for me. You ask how, you know, how was I confident enough to do it? I wasn't confident enough to do it, but I still went for it because I felt if there has to be new MLROs at some point. Because, you know, most of them are, if we just stick with the ones that's already MLROs, they're going to die, are going to be a dying breed. So somebody new has got to step in. I've never been an MLRO.
That's the funniest logic. Why not?
Yeah. And I was like, you know.
But had you covered, sorry to cut in, had you covered fin crime at all?
Yes, I worked in compliance monitoring. So the thematic reviews on fin crime. I knew the function existed. I knew the MLRs. But I looked at the system controls and tested them for insurance purposes, right? Fine. So I knew stuff about financial crime. It wasn't like I didn't know. It just wasn't an area where I was particularly interested in. It was very separate from the rest of compliance.
You're ruining my feelings here.
Oh, sorry. And then when this role came up, it was a career move for me because I wasn't going to have any, there wasn't anywhere for me to go where I was at the time.
Yeah.
So I took a sidestep to a smaller firm that gave me the opportunity to be head of compliance and MLRO. And I thought, whoa. Everywhere else I worked as was two different things, two different people. But I also studied 2 degrees at the same time. So I just went back to myself and said, well, I've done this before. I think I'll be all right.
My brain can do it.
My brain can do it.
Yeah.
So what did I do to upskill myself? I basically reached out to people that were MLROs and said, okay, when you took on your first MLRO role, like what were the things that you needed to know? I took additional external learning courses on how to be an MLRO.
Which ones did you do? This isn't a paid advertisement, by the way.
Yes, there was called Financial Crime Limited, and this was a guy that started his own company that used to work with me before at AXA. And so I tapped into him. He's quite a seasoned MLRO, David Kirby.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So we did one-to-one
It's almost
trainings.
like a mentorship, yeah.
Yeah, almost in that sense. And he's like, don't worry, you can do it. You know, if I can do it, you can do it, that type of thing. And I was like, yeah, I can.
You do a very casual, but it's a very serious job.
It's a very serious job, but also I've got a very good sense of justice. So,
you do.
You know, I want to do the right thing. So I need to know the rules. It's kind of like a football game. Like when you go and you don't know anything about football. Look, I'm from South Africa. Nobody watches football. It's cricket and rugby, right? And then I married an Argentine. And, you know, all of a sudden I had to know about all this. All I was worried about is which way the ball is going to go. So watching the game, when you don't know the rules, it's a bit boring.
Yeah.
Once you know the rules, you can get invested. Compliance is the same thing. Once you know the rules, you can get a bit more invested, which is why I'm so hot on training internally, because I'm like, come on, front office. Like, these are the reasons we're doing this stuff. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, now they get it.
But it goes back to what you were talking about before about the why and over-communicating and telling people, like, getting them to buy into what you're doing.
Exactly. Because so that whole MLRO thing was just about, I read, the Joint Money Laundering Steering Group guidance.
Yeah.
I spent time on the MLRs, making the investment in learning. Like, I'm all for learning and training. Nobody can ever take that away from you. So it was just an area of taking those trainings, how to be an MLRO, how to be a good MLRO, CIF interviews, because I might have to be interviewed by the FCA. So I wanted to make sure I could sit in front of that. And that's kind of escalated from there. I've now sat in front of Moneyval evaluators in Guernsey. It's kind of gone on from there.
So in that role, you reported to the founder CEO?
Yes.
That's a challenge in itself, though, because
totally.
You're like two different perspectives on the same path. It's. I imagine, without talking out of turn, there was conflict, or there was conflict and ambition, of what you wanted or needed to be done from a fin crime perspective. This isn't just where you were. This is just talking to founders, reporting into them. And he obviously had business objectives. You're quite commercially minded though.
Yes, I am.
So did that help or hinder? Because I imagine you were quite empathetic to what he was telling you and you thinking, oh, maybe we could, or were you quite steadfast in your...
No, I mean, again, back to my football example, when it's a rule break, it's a red card. Yeah, but you can't blow the game dead at the same time. You know, you don't see the ref going around every time sometimes something makes, just a slight little mistake. So I didn't have much conflict in putting rules and regulations in place. Yeah. Because there's consequences if you don't. It happens sometimes in the industry when people don't follow the rules. We had some examples recently. It creates a culture of, they're doing really well. Yeah, they're doing really well because they're doing things that they're not supposed to be doing.
Yes. Yes.
So you don't want to be in that camp because that's a very short-minded strategy. Yeah. You want to be in the game for a while. So you got to make the business work. But there's certain areas where you can't go. And it's building up that trust with the commercial people. It's also like parenting slightly. You say yes as much as you can until it's an absolute no. So by the time you say no, they know. Okay,
the no's a no.
The no's a no. This is quite serious. Yes. Yeah. So I've never had that conflict really with the CEOs in that term and getting things done in the right way. And I also have a reputation. So if they wanted to do something a little bit
to the left, they know that I'm probably going to be the wrong person to get in because I'm not going to be quiet about it. Yes. But it's interesting to me because I hope you don't mind me saying so. You are actively pursued by the riskier side of the market, like the brokerages and the ones that are doing the really cool, sexy, high risk stuff. Yeah. So it's interesting. I think they almost want someone who will tell them off. but
I'm a bit sadistic about this.
But it's a misconception, I think, that people in these industries want to get away with what they can. They don't. They want to follow the rules and regulations from a risk perspective. But they want to make money. Yeah. They don't want someone that's going to put them in danger unduly.
Yeah. Yes. And I totally understand that. Like, we want them to make money. It's a business at the end of the day, right? Yeah. But there are some rules to the game. Yeah. So it's about allowing the business to flow in a certain way. Yes. That's good for business. And we all have the same rules, but every shop is different. Every shop is a different trajectory in terms of what they want to do. Do they want to go to IPO? Do they want to sell out? Are they privately owned? Do they have, investors at the back of it? That also changes. And that's some of the questions I always ask when I go to a new role. It's like, what's your drivers? What are you trying to achieve? And how are you measuring what you're trying to achieve? Because I'm like a big data person at the same time. To our point earlier about compliance staff and assessment. It's about looking at the data, what's going on, how much of your time are you spending on it, what you're spending your time on, does it actually add value? Yeah. So
let's talk about managing up then, because I think it's a skill set that people seem to think that they magically get when they become senior. And I know so many that haven't mastered it yet, and the ones who have mastered it seem to just shoot up the ranks. What are your top tips for managing up?
I didn't know that this was a thing until 5 years ago, to be honest. And I always thought, the senior leadership knows better. Yeah. And then somebody said to me once, you have to explain these things to them. And I was like, oh, it's my job. Yeah. And it was kind of like a switch in my head went off and went like, oh, okay, I have to tell them how things are going to have to happen. Mm-hmm. And once I've made that switch, it was kind of like, I had a whole different outcome. But I didn't know that was a thing to do, was to manage up. And now I tell my, other heads of compliance in the other jurisdictions where I work now, like sometimes, managers are the way they are. Maybe they fell up into it. Maybe they weren't given the tools to kind of manage. It's up to you to navigate and communicate what you need from them. Is it prioritization? Is it this? Is it that? But I didn't know it was a thing. Top tip is to say, just communicate, say what you need, ask what the expectations are, what are the objectives that we're trying to achieve, and come up with solutions. Yeah. Finding this problem, have you thought about 1, 2, or 3? It's not about making them feel that they don't know.
Because that's the other thing, is there's the credibility and deference issue, because you want to come across as credible and assertive and I know my stuff, but also there's a bit of deference that's required when you're talking to the CEO or someone.
Exactly.
And it's a sensitive thing for them. If people, well, anyone, when they feel like they don't know something, they get defensive, and the answer is going to be no, no matter what you're asking.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about the approach, I think.
Yeah.
It's about the approach and the attitude you take to it. If you go up and you're being confrontational about it, like, how do you not know?
Yes.
To my point earlier.
Yeah.
The obvious isn't really that obvious. So they might not have had the opportunity to explore some of these themes you're bringing to them, or they might not know. Like, they're also just people, you know. Yeah. And just because they've been in the industry for a while, some people are industry babies in terms of where they work. They've never worked anywhere else. There's a difference between competence and experience. That's a hot one.
Oh,
ta-da-da.
Title of the podcast.
But there is a difference.
Yeah.
And you can help either side, right? You can help either side. If people are really competent and they're not really experienced, you can give them more experience by doing other things. This is this upwards as well as downwards. Yeah. But it took me a little while to figure that out.
It is really hard, because people seem to go from like a senior manager to a deputy to the head of, and that leap is seismic. It is.
Yeah, it's huge.
It is huge. Is there any books you've read, courses you've done, TED Talks, people you've spoken to that have really impacted that style for you?
I do read a lot about leadership and EQ and awareness, because I think that is maybe something that's missing in the leadership space. Mm-hmm. It's just that awareness of what's going on.
You say for yourself. I was like, no, go. No, you're good.
I do still read. Still read this stuff, because I always think there's always improvement.
Yeah.
And we work in a very diverse, industry. People from different cultures.
Thank God we do. Yeah.
And this is what I love about London, which is why, I kept my job here, because it's so nice. It's very diverse. Obviously, I came from South Africa to a place that I didn't know either. And I lived in Argentina for a year. I've done this a few times now. And I like the diversity of it. I think it brings a lot of strength to London's financial services sector by having that diversity. So I try to improve myself on reading some leadership books or TED Talks. I don't have time to watch TV. I've got 3 kids.
I was about to say, it ain't that the mum life.
It's not that. But sometimes just reading some article that maybe somebody wrote on a topic, and it might not be leadership led, but they might have like some nugget in there. It's just
how
like
they approach something.
A way of approaching something, just an outlook, and that kind of sticks with me, and I kind of take that on. Is there somebody I really follow in terms of leadership? No, not really. There's not really anybody I can say as a role model for.
So I was hoping you were going to say like Joe Rogan or something.
It's Michelle Obama.
Could you? Oh, it makes me sick. Okay, let's talk about worldly life that you've had, because you just mentioned that you've been South Africa, you've been Argentina, you now live in Madrid, you had a role in Guernsey. So why? No, I'm good. I'm not going to say why, but what's attracted you to staying in the UK while you've got a life in Madrid? Because I know you mentioned about the multicultural and stuff, but I imagine that was quite a hard negotiation.
Extremely hard.
Yeah.
It was a long plan. People always see the end product.
Yeah.
Oh, you live in Madrid now. That's
you live with your 3 kids in Madrid, and you get to commute back. It seems so easy. She's got it all.
Yeah, but it was a long road to kind of get there. Like most things that's worthwhile, people don't see the work that leads up to the actual success and the micro decisions, sometimes macro decisions you have to make to kind of take that path. This is a weird one to answer, because it has always been on my radar once I had kids. London life, because I'm not from here, is very different from what I'm used to.
Yes.
It's a very city matrixy, and you can plug into it, but actually I do need a lot of downtime to be able to be fully me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't getting that from London. So we made a decision once we had, 3 kids, my eldest was going to go to high school, that if we don't do that move right now, then we're not going to be able to do it. But it actually started 2 years before. I went to work.
Wow.
Yeah. I went to work, and the business had a strategy.
Sorry, just further, this was Aston, right?
A previous role, yeah.
Yeah.
They had a strategy to wanting to go to Europe. And I said, look, I'd be happy to set up an office in Europe. Is it possible to be Spain? And they were like, yeah, we can do that. We can work towards that. And I said, right, okay, so I'm going to focus. This is my personal goal with moving my family. It matches the commercial needs. So let's start looking into it. My CEO was like, I had to think about it and we'll support you. We'll support you to do that. And it was kind of like, wow, okay, this is, this is really happening.
You must have been giddy with happiness.
I was. It was almost like a bit like, whoa.
Dreamlike, yeah.
Yes. And then I went back to the office. Plans changed. They moved their focus to Guernsey. And then the Madrid dream kind of faded away slightly. Yeah. And I was like, well, I've now put my family on this trajectory. I'm not going to...
By just digging into that a little bit, what had you done family-wise?
I've told my kids. One of my kids had a terrible time at school here, and I had to make a decision whether or not I wanted to change him from school or not. Yeah. Knowing that we were going to do that.
Didn't want to do it twice.
I didn't want to do it twice and disrupt everybody. The paperwork in Spain and red tape in Spain is ridiculous. So, my husband has a Spanish passport. The kids have Spanish passports. My littlest one was born in COVID, so she didn't have a passport because, she got a birth certificate 4 months after she was born type of thing. So we had to get her a passport and start all of that paperwork and get her into the little familia, Libre Familia and everything that I have. All of those decisions had to be made already. Yeah. So when the business needs didn't line up and I did my duty, in Guernsey, and when the business needs shifted from there, I said, would it still be possible? And they was like, yes, it will still be possible. But I knew that was going to cause some issues. There were already some cracks showing. And I thought, this is what I want for my life. So I'm going to have to find somebody that's going to be happy to give that for me instead of, and that's fine. This happens all the time in people's life. It's like knowing what you need and finding a place that matches what you need, because it also changes.
But it is also about if you want it, go get it. And I know, and there's that famous quote, you just got to work. But it's not about that. It's about just because you wanted to move to Madrid doesn't mean your company has to do it. No. So if that's not what's going to happen, go and find something that will.
Correct.
And there'll be compromises on your side to get the dream that you have. And I think too often I speak to people when they've got an expectation or a need or something from their career or their thing, and they just think, well, I'm really good, so it's going to happen.
No. Absolutely not.
No, yeah.
And I used to work at a place for 10 years in the beginning of my career, and it was a little bit like that. There was opportunity to do these things, but most businesses, they're running a business. Like, if you don't add any value, there's nothing about this is personal. And I often tell my team that as well. I said, this is a business, there's a business hat and there's a personal hat. Obviously, we work with people, we're not machines, and there's some things we need to take into account. But if you desperately want something for your life, that's not their priority to give that to you. But you can find someone else that might match.
That might do it, yeah. If you actively go and look with that perspective. But also, if you'd stayed at Aston and they had, hypothetically, that you do commuting to Madrid, soon enough, you would have gone in the too hard basket. And they would have started thinking, she's not always here. It's not what we really wanted.
It happened the first week I moved. And I was still employed. It actually happened 6 weeks before I went, and they said, we don't want you to go.
Oh, 6 weeks before.
It was very upsetting at that time because I was very clear and transparent for a very long time about this. I haven't changed my trajectory.
No.
But they kept changing,
I can empathize a little bit with them because I would also want to keep you. I would also be going, okay, she can live in Antarctica, Timbuktu, and back here, bit of Canada. So I understand why they tried to make it work. But you're right, it's a business at the end of the day, and they probably thought, oh my God, we've got that meeting in 2 months' time, and she can't be here.
Oh no, I'm always always there. Yeah. I make sure I commit to the business needs, and I still now I come into London twice a month, and if there's events, if I need to be here, it's a 2-hour flight. There's people that live in the UK that travel every day 2 hours to work on their train from Surrey or wherever they live. So it's not such a hard. I think it's the penny has still not dropped for me that this is actually happening. It still feels a bit.
Your dream is there, yeah.
Yes, and I often have to pinch myself and kind of look back and say, oh wow, but there's been so many struggles to get there. Even when I moved there, I was looking for roles in Spain. Would that be because I wasn't sure. It's about having other options. If you don't have options, then you're kind of stuck. You always have to have some options, and some might happen, some might not happen. Yep. But you have to keep your eyes open, because focusing on one area and thinking that's going to work and kind of bashing just that way, it only goes so far.
No.
You need to have other avenues and relationships in our business, as you know. I mean, you're a recruiter. Relationships is everything.
I'm not a recruiter. I'm the recruiter.
Oh, the recruiter, yeah. But relationships is everything. So being open and honest, asking people their opinion. Do you think this can work? Do you think...
Relationships both ways, right?
Well,
like,
yes.
You don't leave a trail of destruction of I didn't get what I want and, behind you, leaning into people.
Exactly. And it's not a tit for tat. Like that's people often, ask me for advice and they're like, okay, I asked you for this, so if you ever need anything, you can just ask me. I'm like, I'm not giving you advice because I want something in return.
Oh my God, yes. I get it all the time.
Why does this happen?
I got a call the other day from a guy that I knew 5 years ago. He's now in New York and he just wanted some advice. And I loved it. And as if I want anything back for it. Like, I don't need, it's a joy.
Happy you asked me.
It's a joy. It's flattering that people think to ask me for career advice. Yeah. So please do it, everyone. I want to talk about something that I actually toy a little bit with asking guests about this, female guests, because I really don't want successful women to be pigeonholed as a working mother or a mum and stuff. But we've spoken about the impact of your career on your kids. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because you moved them to Madrid for the betterment of them, by the sounds of things, and their lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. How has becoming a mum of 3, which, by the way, hat off, crazy.
Crazy.
Though I'm trying to convince my husband to have another one if he's listening to this. How has motherhood impacted the decisions you make and your style of work and generally as you became more senior? Because you became more senior hand in hand with having more children.
I know. How random is that?
Bit silly. No.
Listen, you don't wake up one day and then you have 3 kids. It's kind of like a deflated balloon and it goes a bit bigger and bigger and a bit bigger. Your capacity just kind of grows for more things. But I think what it has taught me is really to compartmentalize and put boundaries, like certain things. Before I had kids, I was always the first really early in the office, stayed really late. Some nights I still have to do that. I mean, most times I work either or, a bit of a side. Yeah. But it's not my be all and end all. I know when I'm at work, I'm really focused on doing what I need to do. And then I go home, clock off, and that's job number 1, not job number 2. But, that is kind of like...
I feel the same. Yeah.
Yes, it's very important for me to kind of click off. And my kids are still small, so I have the capability to kind of get them in bed by 8, and then I can do stuff after 8 again if I needed to. Yeah. Or I wake up quite early and I do about an hour before they get up for school. And then, the school run itself is just, that itself is a job. It's just getting them all dressed and
you fed. You should see my fitness track. The stress.
I've always been quite organized and quite routine, and that works well for kids. Yeah. So kind of stuck to it. But there's always somebody that doesn't want to put on their shoes or, you know.
Of course,
but it also taught me to understand my staff quite well. So having that additional layer.
What do you mean by that? Because I know exactly what you mean, because it made me a much nicer person being a mum. But what do you mean by that?
It's just people have ideas of their own and they've got their own experiences and lived kind of where they're coming from. And even when you have children, your children is your children, but they're their own people. You know that as much as I know that. So you can be one parent, but your kids can all be different, even though you're the same parent. And you had to adjust your parenting style compared to your child's needs, right? I often tell my kids this, and that's kind of in the back of my head when I work with my staff. Fairness is, if everybody if I had 30 people sitting in front of me, or my 3 kids, I often tell them a story. And I said, if one says their knee is sore, I'll put a plaster on their knee. The next one comes and says, my elbow is sore. I put a plaster on their knee. The other one says, I have a headache. I put a plaster on their knee. Was I fair and equal to everyone? Yes, I was. Was it what they needed? No, it wasn't. Each person needed something different. Even though they all had a pain, it was in a different space. So treating them all the same, it's not actually what they needed. Yeah. So that's how I taught my kids, and I often do that because they go, oh, this is unfair, this is unfair. It's the same in the workspace.
Yes, of course.
And it's, letting them see the other person's needs and realizing it's not really the same as yours. So you're not going to get that promotion right now. You're not going to get that sideways step into a different work stream in compliance or being added to a project, because these are the things we kind of need. And it doesn't mean, you're worse off than the other one. It's just not what you need. You're just not there yet. Yeah. And these are the things you need to kind of get there. So from a work perspective, it's actually helped me a lot to be able to identify that and put the right people on projects. Yeah. Or say, you guys need additional tools and here are the tools. Go on these trainings, get this in before you can join that, and just kind of stagger people out. So it's definitely helped me a lot with that.
Do you think having 3 children, because before I had children, I used to think that you had children and that's the impact of your career. But actually, it's the pregnancy, it's the maternity leave. It's I was like a slow-moving wildebeest when I was pregnant. Like, it was awful. Clients used to make me cry. I cried over everything. It was just, I was not my normal self. And being pregnant and the maternity leave has an impact. How did you, because looking at your career, you look like you kind of didn't have that because you just skyrocketed through your pregnancies and things. But I'm sure there was a story behind that. Like,
yes.
Was there a time with any of your 3 pregnancies and maternity leaves where you felt like you really had to advocate for yourself?
Every single one.
Yeah?
Every single one. And I often tell women in my team that, especially new mums that's pregnant, I don't sugarcoat anything.
Yeah.
Every single one of them were really tough because there's a societal expectation around women having babies and then they're not going to be as, value add when they come back, and they will be distracted. And it's not true. All of that, it's not true. And I kind of think people fall into, this is what they're expecting of me, so I'm just going to be like that now.
You feel like people are looking at you, and so you overcompensate a little bit.
Yes, you do. And also you think like people think I'm not going to be able to add that much value, so I'm just not going to add that much value because that's what they expect. Why is that? Like, you're still you. And even during my pregnancies, I don't think I've missed one day in my pregnancies going to work until my maternity leave started. So, some people are really sick. I was lucky I didn't have any of that business. So I just kind of carried on through it. I did take my maternity leave, but coming back after every single one was really, really tough. And demonstrating that you can juggle that all. It's not an outward experience, but it's an inward experience. Like, there's a lot of doubt when you're a mum coming back. Can I still do this? Would I still be able to? And you know what? It was my husband at the back saying, I remember when I had my first one, I was like, this is like the most important job. And, it was really tough for me. He was traveling quite a lot. So it was all falling on me. And he's like, Wietske, you didn't, study and have all this experience to, just be at home. And there's some people that make that choice, and it's a financial choice most of the time for most women. And that's also a bit sad.
Yeah.
But it's like you need to go back to work. It will make a better mum. You will be a better mum. And you know what it is? It is,
yeah.
I do have doubts. I have friends that don't work, and and they often want to work. It's always the other way around.
The grass is greener,
right?
Right. Yeah.
I was like, just everybody does what works for their family. It's not only a me; it's a family thing. Is this working for my family right now? Even this, I'm spending time in Madrid in London without my kids. My husband has to pick up a lot of that. So it is really a team effort. People look at me or they look at you or, but there's a whole lot of stuff that's happening in the background to make the actors on the stage do what they need to do, right? There's people in the background in the wings or the lights and the sounds.
But it is like, there's a funny thing about when women are successful, they always thank their husband, and their husband never thanks the wives. It's a thing. But
really,
unfortunately for my husband, I think he's great. And I do.
So do I. Not yours, mine.
Hey. But, because I think as a man going to work, I'm trying to word this in a sensitive way. As a man going to work, you can just go to work. Like, when I left the house today, my 2-year-old was at the top of the stairs screaming like I had gone to the trenches.
You're never going to come back.
I'm never going to come back. I've abandoned the family. I'm off to go be a podcast host forever. And it doesn't happen when my husband leaves the house. Like,
of course it doesn't. He's probably not the primary caregiver.
No, and I'm so much more fun. But
it's going to come back to bite you. This fun bit.
He's going to send this as a soundbite to me and be like, you are an idiot. But what I'm trying to say is the pressures of the home life on a woman are greater because it's just the way it is. And when I became a mum, I remember the rudest shock in my life was the biological gender roles, the way that my children instinctively turn to us for different things. And I'm quite a tomboy, boy-like, masculine energy kind of gal. I grew up with 4 brothers.
Tomboy.
Yeah.
They used to call us.
Yeah, they did used to. And so it wasn't necessarily that it was that, but my point on that is you were talking about your husband, you were saying that he's picking it up. And I do actually think your home situation dictates your confidence in going back to work from maternity leave.
Absolutely.
Like, I was really confident. My husband was brilliant. We were just joking before we started this. When I came back from maternity leave for my first, was when I started Think Select. And everyone else was sending me gifts and flowers and saying, go girl power. And my husband was like, oh yeah, okay, have fun. Like, he was just so like, of course you can do it. Like,
I know.
And it was the quiet confidence that was the most impactful. So finding the support network behind the scenes is really important, and explaining to them perhaps of how you're feeling, because women internalize quite a lot when they're coming back to work. But is there any particular way that you made sure that I'm sure you just faked it till you make it?
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a bit of that.
Your life changes when you have kids, right? But every time I returned from work, it was almost like I was also a new person.
Yes.
And there was something else that was more important to me, and I needed to have different things. So often it coincided with changing jobs, or where I'm having that moment to just assess where you are in your career. My career is really important to me. So I'm spending the time on planning where I want to go and what do I need to get there.
Yeah.
So when I was on my maternity leave, I maybe had a bit of extra time to kind of think about these things, going back and this isn't for me. But it was also sometimes from the employer side. We don't need that anymore. And this does happen.
Oh my God, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sadly, very sadly so. There's a lot of mysterious redundancies around.
Mysterious redundancies.
Do you know how many times I get called, oh, we've got a maternity cover, but we're going to make it full time? And I'm like, sorry, pardon me, what? That doesn't sound like any kind of cover. Okay, and just sort of getting back on track away from, so all the people who are not interested in this don't tune out, but setting boundaries at work, 'cause you mentioned that you kind of cut off. You have to, right? There's no way I can recruit when I've got toddlers clinging to my legs. So how do you set the boundaries? Do you communicate? Do you just not take calls, or how does that kind of work?
It's about bringing precious of my time outside of work hours. At the moment, I'm kind of helping outside of my work hours anyway, because it's a bit of a global role, and that's just what's needed right now for the business.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But it's just being very strict with your time also during the day to make sure you cope with getting actual work done and not being dragged into every single thing. I'm a little bit of a fixer. When I look at something and it needs help, I can't help myself.
It's a pimple popper, not a fixer.
Yeah.
I just want to see if I can get that better.
I can definitely fix this.
Yeah.
And I need to get involved. And it's also saying no. Sometimes saying no to something means saying yes to something else. So,
but also,
it's about that. The boundaries is about that.
But it also presents opportunity to people below you for you to say, you know what, I don't need to get involved in that. I'm going to pass that to so and so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You take the lead on this.
Yeah.
I know. If you need any help and guidance, come.
Yeah.
But it's not so much the outside hours. It's also internally during your day, during work, setting some time out for you to actually achieve what you need to achieve. So when you do leave work, you feel like, you've done what you added your value you needed to do, and you can now focus on doing something else. But there's absolutely times, early morning or late night, when I'm at work calls. It doesn't happen every day.
Yeah.
And then obviously I travel. So when I'm, in London.
Do you stay the night when you come over, or are you?
Yes, no, I stay for 3-4 days, and I start breakfast meetings really early, networking. Then I have my full day with work, and then I tend to try and network and see people at night. It's all about relationships.
Full use of it.
Make full use of it.
Do you not burn out? You get tired?
No, I don't know. People call me the Energizer Bunny. I don't know where it comes from. It's just always...
It's that South African work ethic.
Yeah. You know what? It's a resilience thing, I think. And it's built in us, right? Because, South Africa's a tough country.
Yeah.
Like my husband's from Argentina, so he's also from a third world country. But we often talk about the metaphor of holding on to your swimming costume, because the waves are coming. So you can either be caught with it down, or you've got to be ready and just get going with that.
It's interesting, just to touch on, this is motherhood, everything, but there's a tendency sometimes to have a victim complex about it. Like, you're the first mother in the world to have all these problems. Like and it's when you talk to the older generations, like my mum, she just couldn't give a tutti frutti. If I'm moaning to her about something, she's like, "Oh, you're not the
tutti frutti.
You're not the first mother that's happened to." And it's I think sometimes having a bit of perspective on things that seem really huge and big to you at the time, and should demand your time, don't always need to demand your time. So it's you're not as big as important as you think you are. And if you spend a lot of time talking about how hard motherhood and work is, it will become intrinsically harder. There'll be nothing to fix it. So that resilience is something that can be built, not always something.
But having the context around it. And also, I went out for drinks with somebody last night that's in the beginning of her career. And she said, I never had, my mum never worked. So I didn't have that role model of, but I always knew I wanted to have a career, and it's, it's not easy. In society, kind of culturally, also tell some cultures that's not, a possibility. So it's being an advocate for that.
Yeah.
And giving people the opportunity.
But seeking out new mentors that can perhaps demonstrate your style of work. I think going back to people, nailing in on that on people early in their careers who maybe haven't had mentors in banking or in professional services or in, any kind of work. There are mentors out there, but you don't need to specifically have a mentor. You can just become a sponge to the people around you.
That was me in the beginning of my career.
Totally.
I had no mentorship.
Yeah.
And it was fairly late in my career when I had a boss that had 3 children, and she was quite high up, and I'm still very good friends with her. When I thought, oh, okay, yeah, she's doing it. And I was opening up a little bit personally to her saying, how do you achieve all these things? What do you do? And then you realize people have a lot of help in the wings, in the background to be able to do these type of things. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm not supposed to do everything by myself. I can ask for help.
Oh my God.
And I just having that context and being like, oh, okay. And everybody else is struggling too. So we don't need to make it look this easy because it isn't easy.
But it is going back to sort of this is true for anyone. It was years ago. No one I knew had a cleaner or a gardener or anything like that. And now to be successful in work, you do need to outsource a lot of the things in the domestic life. And that's true for men and women, there's nannies and there's cooks. Anyway, we can get onto that. Let's go right back over to compliance because
we've now veered off.
We veered off into my personal interest points. So we'll talk about what other people are interested in. You spoke earlier when we were talking around data points and how that's really, really important to you. How on earth do you track it? Because is it always, the word I'm trying to, just completely escape me because we've only had one coffee today. Is it always trackable?
What gets measured gets managed. So whether or not that is an attitude,
I was thinking quantifiable and qualifiable. Sorry, it just clicked into my brain
there we go.
Jeez Louise.
Whether it's an attitude of somebody in the soft skills area, showing up on time, their attitude towards a certain project, how they conduct themselves in the office, these things all matter. But there's definitely data points because you spend your day doing something, whether that is, doing a transaction monitoring alert, whether that is, a client file refresh, whether that's a payment screening alert. There is definitely trackable numbers to have a look at what's done in a month and who's done what.
Yeah.
And then how long should it take you to do that? This is the big thing about working from home as well, is something that's post-COVID. You need to track people's added value and whether or not they're busy, but not adding much value, or whether they're not so busy and actually adding value. There's always data points.
But also for that, it sounds like very Spy Kids from what you're saying, but it's more around also, if you're not in the office next to someone, you see they're working hard and you can see their outputs. You don't know if they're being brilliant either. So it can swing in the person's favor. If you've got a really data-focused manager who says, hey, you did some really excellent work last month. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, it goes both ways. It's not only from back to the assessment point.
Yeah.
It is about those feeling of achieving something. So you might not have finished written the policy, but you maybe did, I don't know, the first, 10 pages. What have you done this month? It's not I'm kind of looking into you, but it's like, okay, you've achieved that. You know what? Why don't you go talk to somebody else about that and kind of get yourself on that way? Data is such an important driving point, and you can't navigate or negotiate anything without bringing that to the table. Nobody can argue with you around facts and numbers. Numbers don't lie. They can't say, oh, that's a feeling you have that somebody's not achieving their role, or there's a feeling that this person needs a promotion. It's not a feeling. These are the stats. This is how hard it worked. This is what it kind of achieved. And therefore, I think it's worth. It went from this many to this many in the same month. So it works both ways.
Very powerful.
Yeah, it's a very powerful tool to use, and nobody can argue with it.
But you were also mentioning there is a bit of interpretation, like, is someone not hitting their numbers because there's no confidence, or they
correct.
Yeah, so knowing the person behind the numbers, it makes a good leader, I think, rather than just coming in as a new leader and saying so-and-so is doing half the numbers. Well, maybe they're doing a lot. Their EDD is phenomenal compared to everyone else just skating everyone through to get their numbers up.
Exactly. Yeah. Or it's a question of, from an EDD perspective, to your point, are they taking that long because they don't have the necessary experience? Do they need to go on a training course? Do they need somebody else to help them out with the admin bit so they can focus on the risk management of it? What is actually the problem? Or are they just, coasting through the day, having 6 coffees in the office and having a chat to everybody in every other department? It's figuring out and then giving them the tools to be able to achieve what they need to achieve. And if they don't, then, that's just how the things work. So data, even upwards as well as downwards, is the only thing that helps you to negotiate and get your seat at the table to be able to drive change. Yeah. You cannot have any decisions taken if there's no data behind it. It's a very risky game to play.
Yes, it is, yeah. And let's talk about data, baby, and AI. So
love it.
Oh, I know you do, which is why I wanted you here. So you've written articles on LinkedIn. You're very you're a strong advocate for AI and tech and financial crime. Why? I know why, but explain what you think is going to be the vast improvement for us. What are the risks? Is there anything that's really exciting to you at the moment?
It's all exciting to me. I think it's a really good tool to bring in to take a lot of manual work out of compliance people's jobs, everyday jobs. I know some people are scared of it, like, I'm not going to have a job. No, but your job's going to change. You're still going to have a job, but your job is going to change. So for me, it's very exciting to bring tech into it. It will make things more efficient, operationally efficient. It will make things more streamlined. It will make things more measurable. So back to my point about being measured, being managed. I'm very excited about bringing it in. And you don't have to overnight AI your whole compliance department.
Yes.
There's probably people that use AI without even knowing it. Some transaction monitoring tools already, it's been going for years and they were doing AI. Some learning and development platforms in your compliance training have AI. You know how you do the quiz before and then if you get 4 out of 5 wrong, they tailor it. That's AI. Yeah. So it's just about knowing those little pieces. How it's going to transform the department is people are going to get more focused on the risk management side of things and spend their time on more interesting things while the AI take away a lot of the work.
Yeah, because I think everyone kind of knows or can see that down the road for transaction monitoring, sanction screening, KYC, that impact. I'm curious about the impact it'll have on reg compliance.
It's a regulatory horizon scanning models. That's really exciting to me. I'm looking at some providers that's helping with that. Okay. Regulatory horizon scanning, staying on top of what's coming down the line. We all know the FCA at the moment is coming out with quite a lot of change. Scanning through that, summarizing that, focusing whether or not that's going to affect you or not. There's 2 big pieces of financial crime legislation coming out, the failure to prevent fraud and the common reporting standards. That's definitely going to affect our department. Just having something scrape the internet with all the newsletters and all the events and all the AI articles that everybody writes. Yeah, that's a huge help for those horizon scanning people. It's one of the areas that compliance fails in the most. Yeah, not having that network. That I rely on my network and kind of talk to people about what's coming down the line. How do I prepare, reverse engineer this? But if you're new in your career, you wouldn't know the sources of where to go, how to find this.
We may not even have the time to do it, right? You may not have a team underneath you saying, hey, this has come out, you've got a horizon scanning team or a policy team. Yeah.
So that's the area I think it will be really, really interesting to see. Large language models reading through some of these things. There's some dangers to it until, everything's learned. We're in the beginning of this, but it's an opportunity in this challenge. It's an opportunity to be at the forefront of it and see how you can implement it. I do think later on compliance departments is definitely going to change because the experts now have the opportunity to add AI to their value. Whereas, people coming in and just using AI, they don't have that ground level work of maybe how transaction monitoring rules are calibrated. Yes. So it will be a bit easier for them to do it, but it leaves a bit of a knowledge gap.
And what about like FinCrime advisory, but Reg advisory? There are rumours that a European bank has got their front office just putting questions into AI.
Oh, this happens in every office.
And I'm like, is that the best way to? So do you? I imagine they're already doing it, like you say. They're trying to get around it. How do you battle that as a head of compliance?
Yeah, it's just that AI. You have to have an AI responsibility policy and how to use it and in which circumstances to use it, because every office have that now, right? People go into whatever the systems are called and then say, this is what I hear about this type of product. Can we do it with our license? Well, no, I already told you we can't do it for this and this and
but
this
reason. But if you prompt it well enough, it will say yes.
It would maybe tell you yes, but these are the reasons why not. So everybody's having it. So we're actually currently having that discussion in the industry about how to combat that a little bit, because it is about, just because you put those things in doesn't make you an expert. These people spend their lives kind of, knowing how to navigate it around your actual permissions. Well, just because another shop can do something, yes, because they have a different license, or they have a different banking partner and permissions that they are allowed to do from their banking partner. The risk appetite and the risk tolerance is different. So, just because somebody else can do it doesn't mean you can do it. So putting it into old Chat GPT or whatever.
So were you saying before that there's a specialist compliance one, like AI tool, where you can just like horizon scan it specifically for compliance?
Yeah, there's a few. There's a few actually. LexisNexis has a tool. There's a few. ComplyAdvantage has a tool. There's a few service providers that have tools that focus just on this area. There's a list of 6 actually that I'm currently looking at to help our team, because from a global perspective, if you have different jurisdictions as well, it's different for each jurisdiction. So some of these you can tune just according to your licenses that you have with the jurisdictional regulator.
So cool.
I know, right? It's like a bit futuristic, but it's super exciting.
Can I ask about the cost of that? Obviously, you don't need to tell me exactly what you're going to signing up, but like I know the cost of like a horizon scanning specialist, like a VP. So a VP reg compliance person is anywhere between 75 to 120K.
Is that a role? Like just to do just that?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I think it sounds really cool.
It's a lot less than that to get these tools, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but that's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Yeah. So
it's like half of that.
Per year?
Yes.
And it's like a subscription model?
Yes, but also it could be an added tool to something you're already using. Some of these service providers that we use for, like I said earlier on, for transaction monitoring or something, they already they're building these added tools anyway. Yeah. So, they want to sell their product and get stickiness. They want you to take all the products with them.
Yeah.
So they are all developing these things.
Probably free trials and...
Yeah, exactly.
That's
what I'm into now.
I bet you
That's what I'm doing right now. A few days.
That is super interesting. And so how is the role of the CCO, aka you big dog, going to change in the next 10 years?
Oh, this is very hard. 10 years down the line, I think we're just in that space right now. We can't even see 3 years down the line. Yeah. It's so many tech change.
Quickly changing, yeah.
Exactly. And financial regulation is even changing in a more principle-based, digestion of, is no more rule. I just can tell you to focus on how to be adaptable.
Yeah.
Because it's coming, change is coming, it's inevitable. And if you're just going to stick to your guns and do what you've always done, you're going to fall behind real quick.
Oh my gosh, it's already happening.
Always stay moving, always stay current, always try new things. And it can be scary for some people to try new things. But if you don't, you're, especially in the compliance department, any compliance person, doesn't mean if you're a CCO or head of compliance, middle management, an analyst, you all need to be adaptable the whole time. Things are going to change rapidly.
Do you think we're going to be heading for more specialists and more generalists in the space?
That's a hard question. I don't know the answer to that. Just because I think generalists are quite good, but you have to have specialized in something before you can be a generalist. You have to specify in 2 or 3 things before you can be a generalist. I think these days it's not going to be about that. It's going to be about understanding ops resilience. You've got to be, there has to be a connection between you and the front office in certain areas, be it risk or be it, your ops team or your tech team. Yeah. The compliance people are actually going to have to be a bit more well-rounded from a change management perspective to understand how these things are affecting the rest of the business. So you're seeing that with some of the, consumer data that came out, the op resilience that's out. Your compliance person cannot just be a compliance person anymore. So maybe to your point, a bit of a generalist, but change management and being able to communicate that really good is going to be a key winner, I think, going forward.
I am watching with interest whether the market's going to turn really contract again, because we are already seeing reluctance for permanent hires. But when there's so much change and flux going on in the market, new regs coming in, new technology, it's a much more sensible option for you just to layer it over with contractors. And I know you don't necessarily love them, but perhaps that's what we're going to see is just buckets of really strong contractors coming in and helping implement that change.
I'm going to take your lead on that because you're the best recruiter I know.
Woo, woo. Okay, that's just some quick fire questions to round off the podcast. What do you do this isn't really quick because it's a really rambling question for me. What do you do when you're feeling overwhelmed? What's your kind of go-to strategy?
So we have this saying in South Africa that says, you don't eat an elephant with one bite. So
such a South African saying.
Such a South African saying. We don't eat elephants, for those listening, in South Africa. However, the visual is just really good. When I'm feeling overwhelmed, there's a lot going on. I try to focus on one thing at a time, getting through it.
Yeah.
Bit by bit by bit. So being a fixer, it can feel overwhelming very quickly if you have a lot of things to do. But it's focusing on one area to be able to say, okay, I've done now what I can. I'm not going to pass that on to somebody else. And then I move on to the next thing. Yep. So it's just honing in from the big picture, seeing the big picture, but then honing in on the areas that's going to make the most impact quickly. Yep. Take out the feet first, because then they can't run anyway.
Well, yeah. Okay. My next question is, what is the coolest, sexiest, best fin crime tech that you think everyone should have a look at?
I think the horizon scanning bits.
That's it.
It's going to be a game changer. To our point earlier on, it's happening already. The landscape is changing all the time. And I think that tool is going to keep you ahead of what's coming and keep you focused on the areas that are going to touch your business. So it's not applicable to everyone, all of it, but it will help you sift through it real quick so you can implement stuff, be very proactive about it before it comes out. That's going to be a game changer.
Sounds cheap as well. Best MLRO or head of compliance, that's not yourself.
I mean, I've got a huge admiration for Millie Richardson. She was a boss of mine before. So best Chief Compliance Officer, I know.
Okay. And then 2 questions. The second to last one is, what advice would you give to a woman who's having or wanting children that still wants an accelerated career?
Don't give up. Don't let anybody else tell you what you can and cannot do. It's upon yourself to kind of move things forward, drive things forward. And it's also okay to take a break. It's okay to have your 1-year maternity leave if that's what you need to do.
Yep.
You can come back from that. It's not a problem. I did it.
Yep. And the final question is, just because I want to know, what's the best and worst thing about living in Madrid?
The best thing is just the pace of life.
Yeah.
And the enjoyment of real good food and wine. That and the passionate, like Latin people are extremely passionate. I'm married to a Latin, but the best thing about it is people are very passionate about everything they do. And rightly or wrongly, sometimes,
How energizing, though, to be around.
I know.
Yes.
It's infectious.
Yes, I bet it is.
But the worst thing about it, it's been raining for like 3 months straight, and that's not why I moved to Spain.
Makes all the English people take that.
Exactly. Yeah. There's nothing bad about it just yet. I can't say. I've only been there about 6 months now. Yeah. So we're still in the transition. People say it takes a year to kind of fall into a pattern and kind of find your rhythm. So we're still in a bit of a rocky boat situation, trying to figure things out.
Kind of dating period.
Yeah. However, from a working mum perspective, my kids are at school 9 to 5 in Madrid, as opposed to 9 to 3 in London. Yes. So, yes, 9 to 5. So it gives a working parent, a proper time to concentrate on what they need to do.
Schooling that whole time? Or
yes, you drop them off at 9:15 and you pick them up at 5 o'clock.
But are they like playing sport or something? Or are they just...
No. It's like the day is structured into like 2 periods, and then they have a patio. Patio is like break time.
Cool.
And then they have 2 periods, and they have a 2-hour lunch. Because, in Madrid, that's what happens. People take 2-hour lunch. So they have a 2-hour lunch. So you can have an hour lunch, and then you do an after-school activity, but during school time. So you can pick like tennis or dodgeball or parkour or whatever you want to do. And then you go back for 2 lessons. And then they have another patio where they have a merienda. Merienda is like, a tea and bicky sort of situation. But there it's like bocadillo with jamon and all the things that you would expect.
That you'd want, yeah.
Yeah. And then they have maybe another lesson after that, and then they go home.
Oh my God, we could have
it's
a
whole long day. It's a long day, but we can have a whole session just on that.
Because the common sense of the framework around working parents.
Exactly. Yeah. Kids do go to bed much later there. I mean, my kids don't. They're still on British time, but kids there do go to bed.
They go out
much
for dinner
later.
and things with you.
Yeah, dinner is like 9 o'clock at night over there.
Well, thank you very much. I can only wrap up by saying bloody lucky Monex. I already know the impact you're having over there and the ripples it's made in market. So I will be watching with starry eyes as you succeed there.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Yeah, very excited to be at Monex. It's a great opportunity.